Hello, everyone. We are back. This is Web3 Magic. I am BFG, and this is Jonny Mac. And I wanted to have Jonny on a podcast for a long time, but I was sort of hesitant to get people from Farcaster ecosystem on the pod because I keep talking about Farcaster a lot, and I felt there's a lot of podcasts about Farcaster and a lot of newsletters. So I felt it would be kind of like overcrowding the crowd. But I like what Jonny is doing, and I actually like him as a person because I always learn something new when I hear him talk on a podcast. And so I figured, I'll do an exception and we'll see how it goes. Jonny, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me and for that very generous intro.
You see, he's awesome already. And we haven't even started. So let's jump straight away into the first question. How did you get to crypto?
So I got into crypto in 2014 through a podcast that I was an avid listener to called Econ Talk with Russ Roberts. Okay. And he had someone on talking about Bitcoin. And I thought it sounded interesting. And it was kind of at the intersection of things that, of my interests. So I was like interested in economics and also interested in technology. And so I went home, went to Coinbase and bought some Bitcoin, and then didn't really think much of it after that. And then I remember when the Ethereum crowdfund was happening, and I paid attention to that. I bought some ETH, and it didn't really make a ton of sense to me. I didn't really like fully understand it. And over the years, I think the more that I've learned, the more that I've understood. And so the more that it all has kind of clicked. But then I think by 2018, by the end of 2017, I had decided, okay, I was working at Google and I was like, okay, I'm going to leave Google and I'm going to go work in crypto full time. And so that was kind of like my journey from totally like barely interested casual observer to, being kind of all in and sort of betting my career on it. And wow. Here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, it's impressive. I actually, something which you said prompted me to remember Billy. So I had Billy Latke from Intuition on the pod last week. And he was saying, yeah, I built this like mining rig for the Bitcoin, but I didn't really understand it. It's just, I liked mining and I liked the idea that something is doing work for me. So, that's how it started. And I got to understand it way later.
Yeah. I definitely feel that's certainly been my journey. Like, like in the very, I was just like, okay, this is cool. It's interesting. And I've always been kind of interested in like emerging subcultures. Like I grew up listening to, punk and hardcore music and skateboarding and just have always been kind of fascinated with like emerging scenes and cultures. And so I think that's what piqued my interest is it just felt like this new emerging thing that I was like, okay, but it's complicated, like Ethereum, the EVM is very complex. And I think you need a lot of technical context to understand it. And I think it's gotten easier, but I think that, it takes time, and so part of that understanding came from talking to other people, from using products, from building products, and just time in the market.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I'm actually not sure it got easier to understand it. It seems to me it's getting kind of more complex every year.
That's fair.
But it probably is easier to understand what it can do for you because, early on, it really couldn't do much for anybody else except engineers who could write code. Whereas now, I think, if you are interested, you can find some app which kind of does what you are interested in. And it happens to run on some version of Ethereum EVM. Cool. So when you jumped into crypto, where did you start?
So someone who I worked with at Google was an early employee at Coinbase. And I didn't know that. We actually didn't know that we were each into crypto. And so I was just like, I'm leaving and I'm going to go work in crypto full time. And he was like, oh, you should talk to my friends at Coinbase. So I was like, okay. And I was planning on taking some time off. I wanted to take like, a couple months off and just do some traveling and thinking and writing. And but I was like, all right, I'll go talk to Coinbase. So had really good conversations and then ended up just going straight there as a freelancer because I had just moved to Seattle and they're like, okay, do you want to come back to the Bay and, work full time? I'm like,
Right.
no. So we just did contracting. And then I just met all kinds of really amazing people, learned a ton. And that was kind of the first, like my first full-time crypto project. And then that relationship, maintained for about 5 years. And then I worked on a bunch of different products and services. And in addition, I also got connected with Polychain, which is a crypto venture capital firm,
Yeah.
and in particular Polychain Labs. And so ended up doing a lot of freelance product design, which is my background, for their early stage companies. So ended up working with a lot of founders and also to some investors as well, and just really early teams. And I remember at the time thinking, I have been working in tech for, a long time, been doing design even longer. And I remember thinking like a lot of these like young founders that I worked with, I'm like, I'm just, I'm like better at my job than they are. Like I can do really good product design. So why is it that like they're in the position they're in, they've raised millions of dollars and like I'm just this hired gun? And I think for me, the realization was that, they have something that I don't, which is they have conviction. They have belief in what they're doing. And I'm like a mercenary. They're missionaries, I'm mercenaries. And more importantly, they took risk. They have skin in the game. And I don't. And that's why. And I remember thinking like being almost envious of that conviction. And because I knew I wanted to start my own company, I knew I wanted to like build my own things, and but at the same time I also knew that you can't like fake conviction. That's like, and it's a huge competitive advantage when you have it. And so I just remember thinking, all right, well, I'm going to just keep working with founders and keep my ear close to the ground, and I will make this jump as soon as I start to get that thing, that righteous thing, which is that you believe in something and you're willing to take risk for it. And so that was when I started Fabric, was like 2022. I think I'd worked with, I don't know, tens of companies on various stages of like product design and development. And I was like, okay, I think I know, I know what I believe, and I know the outcomes that I want to produce in the world with software. And so now is the time to kind of make the jump. Yeah, that was like the journey from like big, like working on projects, like smaller projects in a big company, to then like working with startups and then finally doing my own thing.
That's impressive. And I, of course, I have several questions, but I'll just make one comment. You are probably the first person on this podcast who actually said something which I resonate with a lot. And it's like, so I started a lot of companies, and when founders ask like, should I start a company or not, I always answer not that eloquently as you, but I basically always say starting a company is like the last resort thing you should do. If nobody else is doing it the way you think it should be done, or they don't want to talk to you and you are sure you can do it better, then it's the moment when you should start a company. And it basically maps totally to your like conviction, because otherwise, you are better off 100% just go work with someone or for someone, do the job you like to do, and just abstract all the, pardon my language, all the bullshit which comes with the company, because there's a lot of things you don't want to do, but they just come with the territory once you start a business. So it's like, conviction is basically like nobody does it, and you have to be really sure you believe in this. Otherwise, don't do it.
Yep.
It may look sexy on like on TV, on magazines, or when you talk to someone. Otherwise, it's not. It's a
Yep.
lot of work.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
there's no guarantee it's going to end up well. So.
That's right. I was talking to another founder, and he said, like, I have a really boring life, you know, and I was like, yeah, me too. My life is like very boring. And it's funny because that is also the life of like elite athletes. You know, it's very boring. It's like all you do is train, you know, you compete, you recover, you know, you have these like things that you do, these rhythms that you get in, and that's it. And I think like uh for many, I think being a founder, especially in crypto, I think crypto as an industry is like especially guilty of this. But it's like a lifestyle. Like it's like a luxury lifestyle. I mean, they go to conferences, you know, every 6 weeks. They like, you know, and there's zero urgency and there's zero hustle. And I think like, I don't know if it's like an age thing, you know, like I'm 40, you know, like, and I'm in the prime earning years of my life. Like the next decade, I think I could probably make more money in the next decade than at any point in my career. I'm the top of my game. And I have a family, you know, I've got a wife and 2 kids. And so the risks that I'm taking right now are enormous. And they're not just me. It's like I'm taking, like my family is at risk too, you know? And so I feel immense pressure and stress and anxiety and a real burden to succeed. And to be honest, you know, being a founder is the best job I've ever had because I feel like I'm like fully realized, but it's also like the worst job because it never goes away. Like the pressure and the stress, like you know, I have employees, like I just feel like immense responsibility. And I think that just sort of translates into this constant need to succeed, to win. And so it's exhilarating, but it's like, it's also kind of terrifying and exhausting. So yeah, I think that's good advice, you know, to give. It's just like, look, if, you know, there's a great story actually. Gary Tan talks about, you know, starting a company early on and pitching investors. And when the investor says to him and his co-founder, like, okay, who's the boss? Who's the CEO? And they're like, well, we both are. And he was like, no, one of you has to be. And then he was like, okay, then it's me. And he's like, okay, why is it you? And he's like, because if something is going wrong, I need to have the agency to fix it. And I remember just thinking like, that articulates this need that I feel, you know, like having worked in big companies, you know, having worked at startups, having worked as a consultant, is I never felt like I really had that decision-making agency to where if I'm like, oh, this doesn't make sense, we should do something different. The only job you can really have where that's true is if you're like a founder or you're, you know, at a very, very high level at a company. And so, which, you know, can take decades and is very political path. So the only way to get it really as a builder is to just start your own company. And yeah, I think if you have, my joke is like, I'm just too much of a punk ass not to be a founder. But if you have that thing in you, you know, if you have that quality in you that just like wants to do it your way, then, and you feel like intense conviction that you're correct, I think those are like the kind of preconditions to becoming a founder. But if you don't feel those things, I think you should definitely not do it because it's a grind. It definitely like grinds you down.
So, you know, you can probably hear a lot of other sounds now, but we go with it.
Very familiar sounds.
Very familiar sounds. It's great to have hosts, guests which have, you know, family of little ones. You know, it's so I've started really early, and this is not a podcast about me, and so I never felt the burden. I always felt, you know, it's like, because I am from Eastern Bloc, so, you know, we had the revolution, you know, socialism went, and then it was like, do what you want, before we even knew what it meant. And so I started my first company in like second year on university, and there was a friend of mine who came to me and said, look, I have a stamp as a tax advisor, but I can't do a balance sheet. But you have 2 classes from accounting. I'm sure you can do it. I'm like, sure, I can do it. I'm not the idiot. And he was like, okay, I want you as a partner. And so we started a company for like financial advisory. We ended up with like 30 girls, working on accounting. And my job was basically just to make sure that they do the balances right, which, in the like balance sheet, it's easy. But truth to be said, it taught me one thing, that I never want to be accountant or financial person. Because, one thing is to understand it. The other thing is to try to find the thing which doesn't fit and makes it imbalanced. And I'm really bad at it. It's like my patience is not that good. But yeah. And so, it just continued in different areas, because at one point in time, I had a feeling that if you want to learn something new, you have to start a company to do it, because there was no other way. And it's way better now, I think, because you can really there are so many smart people who you can join and do things. And one of the reasons I haven't started a company in the past decade is that I don't feel that conviction about anything. I'm always like, first of all, I keep saying to everybody, don't do it unless you have to. So, I can't do it because everybody would think I'm an idiot. And second is like, I don't really know what. I would love to join a project which can, persuade me that, the vision is sound and it's awesome and people are smart and they're like normal. And I think, normal also means it's like, I am older than you are. And so if 23-year-old is telling me about, how they are going to change the world and then they just disappear drinking for a weekend and they come back Wednesday, it's like, probably not. So, but the thing I want to know is, how did you get, from which side you came to a product design? So are you a graphic designer or are you an industrial designer? Graphic designer.
Graphic
Okay.
design. Yeah. So I actually dropped out of high school because I
Nice.
knew I wanted to do graphic design. My freshman year, actually going into my freshman year, I was making, t-shirts and flyers and like doing screen printed posters and stuff, and with friends and with bands.
I'm so envious now.
And so when I went to high school, I was like, okay, great. This is, I like knew I knew what college I wanted to go to, and I was like very oriented towards design, and there was like zero opportunity in high school. So I'm like, well, this is a waste of time. I don't, I'm not going to waste 4 years, doing something that's not going to get me where I'm trying to go. So I dropped out, and then I enrolled in a community college classes and took a number of design and printmaking classes, and then ended up working for a famous designer named Shepard Fairey, really as an assistant. I was 16, 17, and worked for him for 4 years as kind of a assistant apprentice, and then ended up, it was all just graphic design. So that was like the late 90s, like 97, 98, 99, and then 2000. And then around 2000, maybe like 2006 or 7, I started getting into doing web design. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. Like, this is probably where the world is going. So I should sort of parlay my design experience like into this new medium. So I started learning like front end engineering and JavaScript, and just kind of like bumping my way through the like process of learning the front end kind of stack at the time. And then I got hired as a prototyper at WebOS, as a freelance prototyper on WebOS at HP right after they bought Palm. And that was like the perfect, like, I feel very fortunate for that experience, because it was kind of the intersection of like a lot of different things. It was like front end engineering, which I was pretty familiar with at the time, but a lot of like operating system design, like really core UX design. And I knew that UX was like this thing that I'd kept hearing about that was on the horizon that like I needed to like learn more about. And so got this amazing opportunity to work with all these really great, I mean, really, they call them human factors engineers there, but they're really just operating system designers. And so learned a ton, and then ended up going to Google and worked on a bunch of stuff there. And that was kind of like the start of my like tech career. But yeah, it really started in graphic design and printmaking.
It's so one of the things we don't have in Europe is iconic companies, but it's like we all used to. So my first computer was probably Toshiba, but then it was a lot of HP, it was a lot of Dell. Of course, we all, as a young consultants, had Palm Pilots and these things. So it's amazing that you can work for companies which everybody remembers after what 30 years, something. That's impressive. All right. I actually sort of expected that because I see the Sagmeister's book on top of your shelf, and
That's right. Yeah, he's like
and
great. I love him. A huge fan.
yeah, he is impressive. So I never met him in person, but I know Jessica through my stay in San Francisco when I was working on some iPad digital magazines with the early iOS, and they were one of the people which just came around through my editor, and basically very interesting people, right?
Oh yeah.
And I always envied everybody who had like a designer taste. Because so I don't have any, and the only time when I started feeling like a normal complete human was when the AI actually arrived with it's like easy touch on your photos, or I'm not talking about generate from text stuff. It's obviously awesome. Anybody can be kind of like creative and feel good. But before that, it was only like I can look at it and tell you whether I like it or not, but like no details, nothing. And I read so many books about this, and I spoke with Jessica at length about this, and no touch. So some brains are basically wired differently, unfortunately.
That's
So,
funny.
okay, let's get to your current venture then. I intentionally didn't say what it is, so people wouldn't, get too curious early on and they would listen to the journey, because I think sometimes journey is equally interesting as the final product. So what are you working on right now?
Yeah, so now the company I started it's called Fabric, and we made a product called Hypersub. So Hypersub is essentially subscription NFTs. And so what that means is that we extended the 721 NFT standard to include a temporal dimension. So this notion of time, particularly time on chain. And so I guess like if I were to describe this at a really high level and like as non-technical terms as possible, if you think about like what Ethereum is, just like the Ethereum blockchain at a very, very high level, the way I think about it is that it's a global computer that anybody can use. And the way that you use it is you change state on it. So at any moment in time, anyone can go and look at the current state of the Ethereum blockchain, and they can say, okay, this is the state of the world. This is the current state that the network all agrees to. And so what's interesting about putting a membership credential and time on that computer is that you get this like interoperable subscription. So some use cases, like for example, we have a bunch of different kinds of creators on Hypersub. They're doing all kinds of things. Like we have art subscriptions, people doing podcasts, music, building communities and memberships. People are even selling like premium versions of their apps using Hypersub. And the reason why it's so flexible and so powerful is because like fundamentally what it is it's just a credential on this global computer that has a little balance of time. And so any system can go and look up that credential and say, Alice has 6 months remaining, Bob has 2 months remaining, Charlie's has expired. And so you can do all kinds of interesting things. For example, gate access to communities, airdrop art, permissionlessly create like discounts and exclusive offers, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're starting to see these use cases kind of emerge. And I think it's like when I think about it, it's like people go, well, how are you any different from Patreon? And it's like, well, this data is private on Patreon. Like, you don't know how many subscribers somebody has, or when they subscribed, or for how much time, or what they've earned, or anything like that. And so if you wanted to build a system that was interoperable with Patreon, you couldn't do it unless they gave you an API. And even then, you're kind of dependent on them, to allow, like, to
honor
preserve
the
that
API.
access.
Sort of. To honor the API.
To honor the
for
API,
long
exactly.
term. Yeah.
Whereas when you put it on chain, it's kind of like anyone can do stuff with it. So we started seeing this already. Like, we already started seeing like brands have come out and said, hey, if you're an active Hypersub subscriber, we're going to do this, or if you subscribe to, YB, then we're going to do that. And so we're already seeing it as kind of like go to market for like new products, and seeing people kind of like build on top of this open data. So that's the kind of like really high level, somewhat technical explanation, but like the lower level, less technical explanation, just the use cases that creators are using it to earn recurring revenue. I mean, that's the basic, building block that we've made here, is that if you want to earn on chain, if you want to earn in like on like a parallel system that's not Visa or MasterCard, or using ACH or something like that, then you can use Hypersub to do it.
I'm sorry, minute.
Oh, it's all good.
It's all good. Yeah. There was something happening in there. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so great. I love that.
Okay. Yeah. So we are back. Good that there is editing at the end. One question which I had for a long time, and it was not specifically for you, but I actually figured I can ask you, because you definitely, I'm sure you have a thoughtful answer, is, so how do you think about the like phenomenon which a lot of people keep talking about, which is basically subscription fatigue? Do you think it's a problem, or have you guys figured out how to fight it, or it's basically like a normal thing which every sort of service has some kind of fatigue when it becomes too popular?
Yeah, I think it's real for sure. I think it's definitely a real thing. I mean, and like personally, I'm like very suspicious of subscriptions, like in my own, like with credit cards and recurring payments and stuff, because there's this great saying, which is, a small thing repeated is not a small thing. And like, $10 a month, it's only $10, but like in 10 years, it's like a lot of money. We have framed and kind of branded what we're doing with Hypersub as on-chain subscriptions, as NFT subscriptions. But the reality is that it is not recurring. So when you quote unquote subscribe for, say, 6 months, and let's say that you're subscribing to something that's $10 a month, you're prepaying. You're actually putting $60 into that NFT contract, and that's it. Like, the default is that your subscription will lapse. It will expire at the end of 6 months unless you top up. So in that sense, it's kind of like a gift card, or it's kind of like a transit card or a phone card or something like that, where you're putting money into the thing to get access, and you have to keep doing that on a recurring basis. And I think, like, from our perspective, is like, there's this open question, like, is this a feature or a bug? Because some would say, well, if you're selling this as subscriptions, like, it's a bug because it's not recurring. It's like the topping up is not automated. But others would say, like, no, that's a big feature because of what you just brought up, because it is actually, I think, I don't want to say alarming, but it's like there is something that I think there's this discomfort that people have, which is like, okay, I'm going to give you access to this payment method and it's just going to run forever. Like
Yeah.
there is something a little bit unsettling about that, where people are like, no, like I want to have some boundary on what I'm committing to exactly here. And if I feel like I'm getting the value that's promised, then yes, I will top up. And maybe I'll top up for longer periods of time. So rather than just 1 month, maybe I'll add a year, you know? And so we have a bunch of different notification services for basically saying, hey, your subscription's about to expire. If you don't add more time, it will lapse. And we track all this stuff for creators so that they can kind of see, okay, what's their churn rate, what's the renewal rate, lapse, and so on. So I guess I'm with you. I agree that like subscription fatigue is real. And I think that we're in kind of a unique position just by virtue of like how Ethereum works, that we're in this sort of weird hybrid of like it is a subscription, but at the same time it's not the recurring payments are not automated.
Right. Yeah, it's actually so. Yeah, I've never seen it from the creator side because I keep thinking about the subscription on Hypersub, but I keep feeling like it's there's really nothing to subscribe to. I mean, yeah, you can always say support the creator, but otherwise, I don't really feel like there is any value which I could gain, because I am doing the podcast to actually educate people, and I am writing to sort of share what I learned, so it will feel weird. And most of the things I do are not like time bound. So, if you don't subscribe, it's basically like whether you read it this week or next week, it's kind of sort of the same. You should read it when you need it, because I don't really believe in learning things in advance. Maybe you will need it sometime. You should only learn what you need. Otherwise, you'll never use it. But I actually liked it a lot. The reminders which keep coming when your subscription is going to expire. I also like the idea that creators can give you something like some extras if you subscribe for longer.
Yeah,
And
I would
the
say
question.
that. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just finish your thought. I'll keep my question because it can ask anytime.
Oh, just comment on the gating, which is like, I totally agree. Like anyone doing media, you're trying to get distribution. So gating it doesn't make any sense. And so the way that we've seen people frame this is just like, we're going to put the work that we do on chain in the form of NFTs, and then we're going to airdrop those NFTs to the people who support us. And what's interesting, like for example, what I do in a podcast that I have, and what I've seen a couple other folks do, is they'll put their content on, YouTube, Spotify, all the kind of major hosts, and they'll also mint it as NFTs, and people buy the NFTs, and people pay on Hypersub to get it airdropped. So it's kind of like a form of patronage, while at the same time getting digital ownership over the open edition NFTs. So you have some kind of on-chain record of like, hey, I supported this thing, and I have this like token of that support. And so it's like for example, the podcast that we do, I think we've total earnings is maybe around $7,000 or $8,000 in the past 3-4 months, which is I think in the grand scheme of things not a ton of money, but it's like certainly much more than we would have ever made just on YouTube or on Spotify. So I still think there's like, even if you're not gating, there's still a path to support.
So, it's on my list of things to try. I was just, the thing is, I like to try new things, but I am very careful when they include other people. So, I can try 10 things a day. It's no problem for me, but I know a lot of people get sort of like stressed if there's too many new things coming. And subscriptions always felt like, you are sort of, giving it out there. And I'm pretty sure there are some people who would be, like interested, but then there's question like, what is the extra thing? What you just said, like, form of patronage, makes a lot of sense. If, instead of like go mint the pod, I'll airdrop it to you. Probably, fair deal, I would say, because, the price might be exactly the same, or, plus or minus $1. And yes, one of the one of the things which was stopping me was always that whenever I look at the creators using Hypersub, none of the earnings are like a breakthrough money, right? So you sort of feel, does it make sense? But for me, the sense is in just trying it, so it's totally fine. One question which I wanted to ask was, so when I mint the NFT and say I mint it for 6 months, does the creator get the money in advance, or do they get it over time? How does it work? And I am totally now referring to like Alpha Friends or Superfluid Streaming. Whether
Yeah, so there's basically two ways to do recurring payments on chain. There's two kinds of subscription models. One is prepayments, which is what we do, which is, you say like, okay, I'm going to sell you 6 months worth of time, and you just like pre-purchase that time. And then that money goes into the NFT contract, which the owner of the NFT contract, aka the creator, can just withdraw. So there is this like trust is built into the system. The second way to do it is with allowances. And so the way allowances work, this is just like a constraint of Ethereum, which is that you have to give permission to a system to take money out of your wallet at some regular cadence. So that's a transaction that you have to approve. And it's a very unique transaction. There actually isn't a real world analog to that. And so first off, you have a UX problem there, which is like, how do you message that? How do you message allowances? Most people, even pretty savvy crypto people, get confused on how allowances work. There's a second problem, which is that you have to keep the funds in your wallet, otherwise the transaction will revert. So let's say that you say like, okay, I give permission to the system to take out $50 a month indefinitely. Well, you better have $50 in that wallet every time it tries to make that withdrawal, because if you don't, the transaction will revert, which causes more issues. So there's like a fundamental issue with allowances. But then to add on top of that, then there's this question of like, what do you do with the money? And so what some of the systems you mentioned they'll put the money in an escrow contract, and then that money will stream out to the creator. And to me, this is over-designed, over-engineered, and totally unnecessary, because fundamentally, even in that system, you're actually trusting that the creator will do what they promised to do. That's which makes sense. Like, and they're incentivized to do it as well, because otherwise there's reputational risk. And so our approach to this was just keep it simple. So I think, as I know, there's people working on better models, like better allowance systems, like streaming systems. And I think on a long enough time horizon, we'll probably have both. Like, we're not maxis on this at all. For us, the most important thing is the user experience. Like, it has to be simple. And what I see with some of these other systems is they're not at all simple, and that's also the advantage that we have of like just being an NFT, is that it's like you have this, really what Hypersub is a payment rail that's sort of LARPing, that's masquerading as a creator platform. But at the end of the day, really what it is just it's a payment rail that the creator owns. And it has a very, very simple user experience, which is you just mint time. You say how much time you want, and then you buy that amount of time, and that's it. There's no allowances. There's no streaming. There's no escrow. There's none of this complicated crypto babble stuff. That's our view. That's kind of how we've approached it.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think anybody should or would approach it differently at the start. It's all these, like even the NFT idea and buying NFTs for a subscription is already complicated enough.
Yeah.
So just adding more stuff to it probably is not really wise from user
Yeah.
experience. I wanted to, so, I asked about this specifically because one of the showdowns I had historically, which was actually in with the, the iPad magazines, was that we sold a lot of subscriptions to people, and then there was a issue in the team, and the team split, and different parts of the team started sending letters, lawyer letters to other parts, and basically we were stuck with Apple in the middle, and two parts of the team trying to produce something which was already sold, but nobody could do it alone. And so I was actually thinking, I understand the reputational risk, obviously, but I think it's probably fair to assume that there is really nothing which can stop creator after 3 months, even though you bought a year. Basically, just say I'm not doing it. Sorry, family issues, health issues, anything can happen. Of course, it's the world, and not do it. So it's totally probably fine. And when I talk about streaming, I got excited about streaming because I had a friend from Superfluid on the pod very early on. We met in Milan, and I liked their idea, even though it's tricky because obviously people are not used to it. But so they stream money based on seconds, and it's enough if you have the money in your wallet for the next second stream. So you don't put into escrow anything. So you can have money flowing into your wallet and out of your wallet at the same time. But I think a lot of people understood it on the Alpha Friends example because they subscribed a lot, and then it's one day, if the streams don't match, it will stop.
Yeah.
So
and we're seeing that now.
Yeah, so we're seeing it now, and I think in real life it's a little bit more problematic. But I just,
Agreed.
I think everybody loves to look at the a dashboard where you see the numbers rolling up.
Yeah,
because it never happens in real life, right?
Exactly, and that's where I'm not going to comment on their product or strategy or whatever, but I'll say about the way Hypersub works is that what you see is what you get. When you look at the earnings and the rewards tabs in Hypersub, that is the money that is sitting in that contract right now. Yeah. And that is the money the creator earned and can withdraw. There's no promise of future earnings or anything like that. It's very, you can go and look at these. This is the great thing about the EVM is that you can verify this. You can look at the NFT contract and you can say, yep, this creator, one of our creators has earned almost $100,000. We have a handful that have earned tens of thousands. And then a longer tail that have earned thousands and hundreds. So you can go and look at their contracts and you can see, yep, that money is sitting there, so it's not, there's no speculation there at all. And I think to me, that's if you're trying to build a tool for creative people to earn, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, totally agree. I think, so the simplicity is definitely a thing. So I have several, I have probably a couple of questions to sort of lead us to the end.
Yep.
One would be, how many creators are actually using? And you don't have to give me exact number. I'm just interested if it's hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands.
No, it's very small, very, very, very small. Okay. So I think total, we have a Dune dashboard, so you can go and just look at all of our metrics and data. Okay. It's all public. So I think we've paid out, I should say creators have earned about $600,000 over the last 5 or 6 months. Okay. And I think there's been 430, something like that, deployed. The vast majority of those are what I just call tire kickers, people who will deploy one, they'll put some money, they'll subscribe. Yeah, they just try it and see. Yeah. I would say it's probably I would say there's something like 50 maybe creators that are seriously using it, that are doing drops regularly, that have subscribers. They're actually like, taking it seriously and they're earning real money. I would say it's around there, give or take 10, I would say that's pretty much like where we're at.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so when have you guys launched? So,
we launched in, let's see, this is funny. I think we launched in November or December of last year.
I see. Right.
And there was no usage at all. Zero. Like, until February. And so we thought basically I was like a wreck. Like, we thought that we just completely failed. Like, we committed the cardinal sin in software development, which was to build something that nobody wants.
Right.
And that's like, it's like actually really hard to build things like on chain. Like, it's hard. Like, writing smart contracts is hard and time consuming, and especially contracts that handle money, you cannot fuck them up. And so it's like your development cycle is just longer, which means it's riskier because you don't have a lot of time to like validate. Now there's, of course, this is debated. Some people say, well, don't make a smart contract, just do everything in like a web app, which I think is goofy, but that's a separate discussion. But anyway, we just thought like, okay, well, we blew it. It went over everybody's head. And then in February, it started to really click. Like, we had an artist, do super well, like make tens of thousands of dollars in just like a couple weeks. And then that started getting other artists interested, and then other kind of categories of creators. And then it started to kind of pop off. So though we launched, I think it was in November, it wasn't really until February that it started to get any kind of traction at all.
Nice.
So we're really like, I mean, technically it's probably like, 6 months, but really I'd say it's more like 4 months that we've actually been like doing our thing.
No, it's impressive. And so you've been working on Fabric from when?
So we started the company in at the last half of 2022. Right. And then we built kind of an alpha product that didn't go anywhere. So we shut that down after a couple months. And then we built a crowdfunding protocol that was a great product. It's actually like one of my favorite products that we built, but it just didn't, like, there's just a lot of issues with crowdfunding. So we're like, okay, that's not the thing. And so then Hypersub was like our kind of third, product that we iterated on.
Was there anybody else doing the on-chain subscriptions before?
Sort of. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Not really in the way that we did it. So like, and this is not a new idea. I mean, there were many, I think there were 3 separate EIPs for subscription NFTs.
Okay.
So, but none of that, they actually all, I forget the name of the flag, that I forget what EF flags it as, but it's like do not use or something like that, where it's like, they just never got the developer adoption. And so this is an idea that has been kind of floating around for years. And so, there were other teams that were kind of doing subscriptions or just doing them in a different way. And so we were like, okay, for us, it's very simple: subscriptions, like on-chain subscriptions, and NFTs. And that's the intersection we're going to be at. Like, it's like very much those two things and those two things only. And so I think like that really, really simple approach, no one had really done that, at least not that I'm aware of.
Well, yeah, I think crypto world is not that big, so you would probably know.
Yeah.
Well, so I think one question before I start thinking. So you guys launched, did you use Farcaster as your go-to-market, or was it like a bigger launch somewhere else?
Just Farcaster. So that's where all of our distribution is. Like, Farcaster, like, we're a big fish in a small pond. Like, I have a good following. We have built up good distribution of Farcaster, but Farcaster itself is very, very small still. So we basically have, no distribution anywhere else. That's like, Twitter, there's like, it feels to me like a black hole. Like, I just, there's no real engagement there for us.
Tell me about it.
And then we don't really have anything anywhere else, like we're not on any other platform, which is part of the reason why I'm so bullish on Farcaster and want to see Farcaster succeed, is because, it actually does, if it grows, it can really help with new things getting discovery. It can help people with distribution just by virtue of the way that the network is structured.
That's true.
So I think, for us, we're kind of just like all in on Farcaster. We're gonna sink or swim.
I thought it's the case because I haven't seen you much anywhere else. But truth to be told, I am in many places, and I tend to miss some things. But one of the things I believe is great in your line of business, is once you get, it doesn't matter how many, if you have more than 10 creators who are making any serious money and they're interesting people, there is very few businesses which have better marketing material. In terms of, like, I know you said you don't go to conferences, and I go to way less conferences than I used to when I ran different companies. But this is like obvious conference material. It's the very few people who can walk on stage with a creator and show like nice stuff they are doing and say, I am just the guy who's enabling this, but he is making the real money. And there is a room full of people who are making the same stuff. They just don't know you exist. And it's probably like a super easy sell. But obviously, you needed to do the hard work up front to get those first like 10, 20, 100 creators, and they have to be happy. And then, they'll be happy to talk about it without any restraints. And so, the growing part is easy then, or easier than it would be. It's never easy.
Yeah, I think that's right. Having the creators do our marketing for us is the most powerful. I mean, that's actually been the source of our growth. Is people will say, "Oh, I was just talking to Max Jackson, or I was just talking to Oxen, or I was just talking to Chris Carell or someone," and they mentioned Hypersub, and so I want to learn more about it. And it's like they already come to us like very
half persuaded.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're already like very interested and bought in. And so that's like, that was the hardest thing, because when you're pitching someone on this new unknown thing, like everybody has this kind of wait and see approach, and they don't want to take any risk. And why should they, But then when and this is the great thing about Farcasters, it's like such a, emerging environment that everyone's kind of willing to explore and try stuff and experiment. And so that was a great, like, that's just like been a great environment for us to like gather information and get early users and get feedback. Now that we have it, you're right. It's like now there's a little momentum, where people are telling their friends or talking about it, and then people are coming to us already kind of ready to go.
So I think it brings us to the last question. So what's in the store for Hypersubs and Fabric in 2024, or let's say rest of the 2024, because we are approaching June?
Yep. So we've got a bunch of new features we're launching. So we just did a V2 to the protocol that powers Hypersub, and so that it's going to introduce tiers. We're going to add actually credit card payments, so monthly recurring credit card payments for people who want that. We've got a bunch.
Is it going to be like a reoccurring thing?
Yes,
or is it? Oh,
that
okay.
will be.
So never stops.
It never stops. So if you want that, and many people do, you can get it. Right. We have some fun stuff that we're doing for Onchain Summer with Base. We have some features that we have in Coinbase Wallet that I'm really excited about. We just did a recent accelerator with a bunch of incredible creators and artists. We'll probably do another version of that, Accelerator 2. Let's see. We've got some fun stuff that we're doing kind of in and around Farcaster channels, monetizing channels. bounties is another interesting use case like that we're seeing people use Hypersub for. So yeah, a lot of, I mean, I think we're in this kind of like expand and explore and learn phase where we're seeing all these different use cases emerge. And so we want to just continue to facilitate that and learn and grow. But yeah, those are the main things that I think are probably the next, the next 6 months will keep us busy doing.
I'm glad to hear there's something interesting coming up in the new Coinbase wallet. I'm actually looking forward to it. The wallet should be very cool.
Yep.
Wallets are just pain in the ass for everybody.
Huge pain. Yeah, huge pain.
It's a nightmare. Okay, Jonny, thank you very much. It was a treat to have you on. I'm super happy that you made the time, and I'm sorry that it took us way longer than we originally discussed.
All good. This is a great conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And everybody, don't forget to go and subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts. This is Web3 Magic and BFG. Have a great day.